Hello, dear viewers and guests of the channel Myths and Legends. Today, once again, I will immerse you in the mysterious atmosphere of ancient Scandinavian mythology by sharing one of my favorite stories. We will continue to explore the myths and prophecies of the northern peoples, where the fates of gods and mortals intertwine. I hope this story piques your interest, as each myth hides deep meanings and lessons. The unique magic of Scandinavian mythology lies in the fact that the gods, knowing their fate, did not try to avoid it. They lived with the full awareness that in the future, they would face Ragnarok, the great battle that would lead to the demise of most gods and the destruction of the world. Nonetheless, even with this inevitable fate, the northern gods enjoyed life, participated in battles, feasted, and went about their business, remaining calm in the face of their own end. This calmness can be explained by the view that Ragnarok was not perceived as the final end of everything. According to Scandinavian beliefs, after Ragnarok, there would be a renewal of the world, and a new cycle of life would begin. In this sense, Ragnarok is merely a transitional moment, a rebirth after which the world and new generations will emerge. The prophecy of Ragnarok belongs to the Volva, a dead prophetess revived by Odin, the chief god of Asgard. Like the other gods, Odin understood the importance of knowing his fate and sought to comprehend the mysteries of future events. It was the Volva who told Odin that the beginning of Ragnarok would be marked by the death of Baldur, the beloved god. This tragic death would be a turning point, after which events would unfold swiftly. When Baldur dies, terrifying things will begin to happen in the world. One of the omens will be the appearance of a massive hound, Garm. This dreadful creature with 4 burning eyes guards the entrance to the world of the dead Helheim. Its howl, which will echo across all 9 worlds, will serve as a warning of the approaching end. Another key event foreshadowing Ragnarok will be Fimbulwinter, the giant winter that will last 3 years without interruption. During this dreadful winter, the world will fall into chaos, snowstorms will follow one another, destroying everything in their path. People will fight each other for survival, brother will turn against brother, and moral principles will collapse. This will be a time of great crisis, when all values by which humans and gods lived will be destroyed. Thus, Scandinavian mythology describes Ragnarok not simply as a disaster, but as an inevitable cycle of nature and time. Death and destruction are only stages, followed by rebirth. During this prolonged and ruthless glacial period known as Fimbulwinter, nature will fall into complete decline. The land will become barren, fields that once yielded abundant harvests will perish under snow drifts and no longer bear fruit. Harsh frosts will descend upon everyone, even livestock, which served as a source of sustenance, will perish from the cold. There will be no provisions and people will be on the brink of extinction. Small villages will be defenseless against the harsh winter. Their inhabitants will freeze in their own homes, unable to escape the piercing icy wind. Meanwhile, in larger settlements where people find temporary shelter, the situation will be no less tragic. Forced to live in constant need, facing hunger and cold, people will gradually begin to lose their sanity. Consumed by despair, they will descend to their basest instincts. An era of cruelty and violence will begin. Close relatives, who once lived in peace, will fight each other. Brother will raise a hand against brother, breaking the bonds of kinship. Mothers, losing all hope of salvation, will, in a fit of madness, eat their newborn children, while children, having abandoned all moral principles, will kill their parents for mere crumbs of food. Humanity will lose its sanity and descend into chaos. Everything created and preserved over centuries will be destroyed. Moral foundations will fall, and people will indulge in depravity, sinking into a world of corruption and limitless murder. It will be a time of dishonor and great shame, when no trace of ancient traditions remains, when faith in the gods is forgotten, and none of the former virtues hold any significance. When these 3 years of unending winter have passed, dark and dreadful omens will begin to signal the approaching end. The roosters, whose call announces the start of the final battle, will crow their fateful cry. And then the liberation will come. The chains that bind the great wolf Fenrir will not hold, the mighty links of the Gleipnir chain will snap, and Fenrir will be set free, ready to bring chaos and destruction. This will be the beginning of the end, when Ragnarok enters its final phase. When Fenrir finally breaks free of his shackles, he will rush to the field of the last battle, bringing with him the harbinger of impending destruction. His massive paws will pound across the land, leaving shadows of doom in his wake, and in his furious gaze, the inevitability of the end will reflect. Simultaneously, the world serpent Jormungand, sensing the shift, will rise from the depths of the ocean. Opening his massive jaws, he will emerge to the surface, ready to contribute to the forthcoming catastrophe. His movement will stir the waters, creating gigantic waves that will swiftly crash upon the shores of Midgard. Meanwhile, in the fiery realm of Muspelheim, Surtur, the giant ruling this blazing domain, will assemble his army. Enveloped in flames, the fire giants, led by him, will march toward Asgard and Midgard. Their path lies across the sacred rainbow bridge, Bifrost, connecting the worlds. However, with each step that Surtur takes, the bridge will crumble under the weight of his fiery advance. The flames radiating from his body will scorch everything in his path, turning the bridge into charred ruins and the sky itself into a blazing canvas. The flames of Muspelheim, spreading further, will even reach Jormungand, scorching his scaly body. Writhing in agony, the serpent will thrash in the ocean, and his movements will cause devastating floods. Enormous waves will sweep across everything in their path, covering shores and flooding cities. Thus the world will be caught in the clash between fire and water, where flame and wave will fiercely battle for the right to annihilate all life. But the chaos will not end there. Surtur will not be the only one to summon his forces. Across the ancient world, mobilization will begin. The enemies of Asgard and Midgard, inhabitants of other hostile realms, will also start preparing for battle. The entire universe will be engulfed in a military call to arms, and the forces of darkness will gather for the final confrontation. The ruler of the realm of the dead, Hel, will leave her underground kingdom to lead an army of the dead in the decisive battle against the gods. Leading her legions will be the souls of the deceased, destined to fight in the final clash. Loki, the god of fire and trickery, will break free from his chains and captain the sinister ship Naglfar, crafted from the nails of the dead. This is the reason for an ancient Icelandic belief: the nails of the deceased must be trimmed before burial to prevent them from falling into the hands of dark forces and being used in the creation of this ship. Meanwhile, Asgard will not remain idle in its preparations. The Aesir gods, led by Odin and Thor, will ready their weapons. Swords, axes, and spears will be sharpened meticulously, prepared for the upcoming battle. The core strength of their army will be the Einherjar, brave warriors who fell in battle, whom the Valkyries brought to Valhalla to fight for the gods in this final hour. The warriors and their heavenly protectors, the Valkyries, will form a celestial cavalry, ready to enter a deadly battle against the forces of chaos and destruction. When the moment arrives, Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, vigilant over all realms, will blow his horn, Jallarhorn. Its sound will echo across Asgard and Midgard, signaling the beginning of the fateful events. This sound will proclaim that the great battle, foretold by ancient prophecies, has begun, and neither god nor any creature will be able to remain on the sidelines in this conflict that will determine the fate of all worlds. Before the decisive clash, the father of the gods, Odin, wishing to learn his destined path, will turn to the wise head of the giant Mimir for counsel. He will ask where best to meet the enemy in battle. The wise giant will answer that the battle should take place in the valley of Vigrid, where the forces of chaos and the gods will meet. As Mimir predicted, armies of Loki, Surtur, and Hel will gather in this valley, ready for the final battle. The moment of the inevitable final clash arrives. The wolf Fenrir, a massive beast and the son of Loki, driven mad with fury, will race across the battlefield like lightning. His powerful fangs will tear through the Aesir gods, and his enormous paws will crush giants, leaving destruction and chaos in his wake. Everything will plunge into a bloody chaos until Fenrir notices a rider on the edge of the battlefield astride an 8-legged horse. It is the supreme god himself, Odin, charging into battle on his loyal Sleipnir. Two of the greatest forces will collide, ready to fight to the end. Fenrir, wild and furious, will try to snatch Odin with his fangs, but the god will skillfully dodge his attacks. Every time the wolf's jaws snap shut, Odin will strike with his spear Gungnir, piercing the beast's thick hide. The wolf's blood will flow more and more, and victory will seem close. The father of the gods will feel that he can deceive fate, that his strength exceeds the prophecies. But at the moment when victory seemed imminent, Fenrir's jaws opened incredibly wide. In an instant, the beast swallowed Odin along with his loyal horse. This terrifying moment took everyone by surprise. The death of the supreme god shook the battlefield, and upon seeing the fall of his father, Odin's son, the silent god Vidar, roared with fury across Vigrid, ready to avenge his father's death. Fenrir responded to this furious cry, charging at Vidar. However, Odin's son was prepared. He leaped upon the giant wolf, and preventing it from seizing him, placed his foot in a magical shoe inside the beast's open jaws. At the same time, with incredible strength, Vidar pushed the wolf's jaws apart, tearing them in opposite directions. In one swift but fateful moment, Fenrir's mouth was torn apart, and the dreadful beast fell dead. Thus, the deadly clash between the gods and the monster came to an end. Meanwhile, scorched by the flames of Muspelheim, the world serpent Jormungand began slithering toward the battlefield, unwilling to stay on the sidelines. Rising from the ocean's depths, he attacked the Aesir forces, spewing venomous fumes from his massive jaws, poisoning everything around him. His colossal body, writhing, shook the earth, bringing devastation. No one could stop him, and then Thor, the god of thunder, stepped forward to battle this monstrous foe. Without hesitation, Thor charged into the fray, his hammer Mjolnir striking the serpent with crushing force. Jormungand responded, dousing Thor with streams of poisonous breath that poisoned all living things around. The ground quaked under the serpent's tail, while the thunderous blows of the hammer crashed upon his body. The battle was so intense that each strike seemed to reverberate through the very fabric of the universe. At last, Thor delivered the decisive blow with a powerful strike from Mjolnir. He shattered the skull of the venomous monster. Jormungand fell, slain by the thunder god's might. But Thor had little time to rejoice in victory. Saturated with the serpent's poisonous fumes, Thor felt the poison take hold of his body. After taking just 9 steps following his victory, he collapsed to the ground, no longer able to resist the deadly venom. Jormungand's venom fulfilled its fate, taking the life of the great Aesir. Enraged by Odin's death, Heimdall, the guardian of the gods, charged through a hail of arrows towards his ancient foe Loki, the traitor of the gods. Their clash became one of the bloodiest battles of the day. The strength of both opponents was evenly matched, and neither could gain the upper hand for a long time. Swords clashed at lightning speed, ringing in the air, until finally Heimdall landed a fatal blow, severing Loki's head. However, the victory came at the cost of his own life. Bleeding from numerous wounds, he too fell on the battlefield. As the fight between Heimdall and Loki came to an end, another terrible opponent appeared on the battlefield, the four-eyed hound Garm, led by his mistress, the ruler of the dead, Hel. This monstrous beast, akin to Loki, though smaller than his brother Fenrir, was no less fierce. Blood dripped from his bloody jaws, remnants of the Einherjar he had mercilessly devoured. His fierce attack was stopped by the god of war, Tyr, who charged into battle with Garm. Unafraid of the beast's monstrous power, Tyr's sword struck down upon the hound. But despite all his courage, Tyr could not prevail. Garm clamped his powerful jaws onto the god of war's body, tearing him apart. However, the monstrous hound himself was mortally wounded in this brutal duel and died on the battlefield, bleeding out. And then, when the ground was already soaked in blood and chaos reigned everywhere, the riders of Muspelheim stormed onto the battlefield. Cloaked in flames, their armor and swords ablaze, they rode through the battlefield, bringing even more destruction. These fire lords became the final catastrophe, destroying everything in their path and turning the plain of Vigrid into a burning hell. Surtur, the lord of the fiery realm of Muspelheim, relentlessly crushed everything in his path. He ruthlessly killed goddesses fighting alongside their husbands, including Frigg and others. Each of his attacks left nothing but flame and ashes. Freyr, the god of fertility and sunlight, realized that Surtur, symbolizing the end of this world, was unbeatable. Understanding the inevitability of his death, he decided to face his fate in one last battle. Freyr went straight to the blazing giant, holding only a deer antler in his hand, a weapon with which he intended to fight Surtur. In a brief but fierce clash, Freyr managed to pierce the giant's eye with the antler. However, besides a momentary pain, Surtur felt almost nothing from this blow. His fiery body was too powerful for such wounds. In response, Surtur unleashed his full strength upon Freyr. Flames engulfed the god, and his body was torn apart. But even Freyr's death could not stop the fire giant. Surtur continued his destructive march, bringing chaos and the end of all existence. Under his steps, the world cracked and melted. Flames emanating from his body reached the world tree, Yggdrasil, and massive streams of fire engulfed its trunk. The mighty ash tree caught fire. Its roots, which had been gnawed for centuries by the dragon Nidhogg, could no longer hold the trunk. The tree, a symbol of the world and life, fell, marking the final end of the old world, beyond saving. At the end of the great battle, the Fire Lord Surtur destroyed not only both armies but the entire world. His flames consumed everything, turning the earth to ash. Meanwhile, the children of Fenrir, the wolf skull, and Hati swallowed the sun and the moon. After that, the celestial bodies disappeared from the sky, and the stars went out one by one, plunging the universe into absolute darkness. The sea flooded the desolate and scorched land, over which stretched a black sky. There was no more light, neither day nor night. Asgard, Midgard, Jotunheim, and Muspelheim ceased to exist. The lands of dwarves and elves also vanished in the fire and chaos. However, despite the apparent complete destruction of the world, the universe is bound to cycles. Death always brings new birth. After the destruction of the world, a renewed life began. High above the former worlds, even higher than the place where Asgard once stood, the young gods rose. Among them were the silent Vidar, brave Vali, mighty Magni and Modi, and the skilled Ulfr. These gods managed to survive the fateful battle. With them also returned Baldur and Hod, who succeeded in leaving the realm of the dead, Hel. Thor's hammer, a symbol of his strength, now belonged to Magni, the hair of the mighty thunder god. The young gods gathered together, speaking of the great deeds of the past, remembering the ancient actions of their ancestors. They discussed plans for the future, for building a new land that would become their new home. Thus, after destruction and chaos, the rebirth of a new world begins, where the young gods will take on the roles of creators and protectors of a new era. Below them, from the world ocean, a new land begins to rise again. It is covered with fresh greenery, wondrous forests, gardens, pastures, and fertile fields. Life returns. Among the survivors are not only gods but also representatives of humankind. In the secluded grove of Hodmimir, a man and a woman named Lif and Liftrazir awaken from a long sleep. It is they, by the will of the gods, who will revive humanity and begin a new cycle of life in all 9 worlds. With their awakening, a new era begins, in which the history of the world will be rewritten anew. Friends, thank you for joining me throughout this great tale of Ragnarok, for not fearing and not retreating as you followed this epic story to the end. I tried to tell you how the ancient Scandinavians imagined the end and rebirth of the world, and I hope I succeeded in making it accessible and understandable. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Your likes and comments are the best way to support the channel and help it grow. There are many more interesting stories and myths to come. See you next time on the channel Myths and Legends. Until then.